In today's episode, I'm going to share a little bit about myself and my personal history, and what I share might surprise you. So stay tuned. Welcome to the Do More, Stress Less podcast. I'm your host, Alexis Hasselberger, a time management and productivity coach. In every episode, I give you actionable, practical tips to help you learn to use your time in a way that feels good to you every day. No more hustling, scrambling, or struggling to keep your head above water. So let's dive in, and soon enough, you'll be doing more and stressing less. There's something you probably don't know about me. And it's not because I'm hiding it, but it's likely because you may have made some assumptions. Most people look at someone who helps other people with time management and productivity, like me, and assume that these are skills I've always had, that these are innate traits, and that I must be super organized by nature. But this actually isn't true. The reality is that I have ADHD, and that I got really good at these skills because they were essential to my success. These skills are hard earned. Now, how did I come to learn that I had ADHD? Well, actually, I can thank some of my clients for this. When I first started coaching, I started to notice that many of my clients were adults with ADHD. And at first, I did a ton of research because I wanted to make sure that I could serve this population. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't sharing only neurotypical strategies that don't often work for people with ADHD, et cetera. And to my surprise, my research led me to the understanding that I was already teaching strategies that tend to work well for folks with ADHD, among many other things. Now, I'd always begun every single client engagement from the premise that we start with learning who you are and how your brain works exactly as it is, because I find it's much easier to build sustainable strategies around who you are, whoever that is, than to try to fit you into a box of what worked for someone else. And the more clients with ADHD I worked with, the more stories I listened to, the more I saw myself. All of the struggles these clients were experiencing, they were my own struggles. These were issues I dealt with all my life and that I'd experimented and iterated my way around until I found strategies that worked for me. The only difference between my clients and me was that I'd already learned the skills I needed and that my clients were just getting started on that journey with my help. And so I went to seek diagnosis to determine if what I was seeing and starting to see was actually true. Spoiler, it was. Have you ever heard someone say, "We do the work we need"? Well, I was certainly in the thick of it. I needed skills around time management and productivity. And so I went out and found them. And then, well, my clients found me. Now, do all of my clients have ADHD? No, of course not. I work with all sorts of people. And because I work with people starting from the premise that everyone is unique, the process I use for coaching works well for folks with ADHD and folks who are just busy and overwhelmed and have a lot on their plates, regardless of any other struggles. Now, if you're curious about me, well, looking backwards, I developed a ton of coping strategies that worked well for me. And the funny thing is that I didn't realize at the time that they were coping skills. I thought everyone had it hard and needed these systems and strategies. So, what are some of these coping strategies turned skills? Well, first, I have always had a pretty crappy memory. In fact, my very first blog post was called Remember is a four-letter word. So in school, I just never enrolled in classes where I had to memorize things, except for bio, my freshman year of college, where I got the worst grade I had ever received. And let me tell you that a C plus for this straight A student was a real blow and something I wasn't eager to let happen again. So instead, I started taking classes that capitalize on my strengths, like talking and writing. I also took jobs where I had an office with a door that I could shut. With HR, which is what my background is in, you're dealing with a lot of sensitive info, and so a door was needed. I also negotiated the ability to work from home long before it was cool because I'm so highly sensitive to noise and distraction. I actually started working from home about 10 years before the pandemic. I needed a lot of structure because left to my own devices, I lose track of time in a major way. So I started using timers and time blocking to keep me on track. I started developing a framework for a task management system so I didn't rely on memory. Remember, I've got a really terrible memory. Thanks, ADHD. But let me tell you, it didn't start out that way. In fact, when I was in college, I used to keep track of things by literally writing on the back of my hand with a ballpoint pen and then trying not to wipe it all away when I was taking a shower. Yes, that is how ridiculous my systems were at the beginning. I started ruthlessly decluttering my house on a regular basis and throwing things out so that they didn't pile up. If I don't have an important place for all my important stuff or just a place for my important stuff, then it'll just pile up and I'll lose it. And I'm a little embarrassed to say that I lose track of my phone still at least once a day. I write everything down because, again, lack of short term memory. And I even end up sometimes repeating stuff to myself until I can write it down, say if I'm in the shower or something. There is a game I've been playing with myself for years, and I call it Time Check. And it's just where I ask myself what time it is before actually checking the clock so that I can work on improving the skill of understanding how much time has passed, because that does not come naturally to me at all. Much to my husband's chagrin, sometimes my 5 minutes is often more like 20 or even 45. Yes, time blindness is a real thing. So I use a lot of timers and a lot of alarms because if I don't, I forget things or I burn things on the stove. Now, what am I doing about it now that my diagnosis is a few years old? Well, the primary thing that's changed is simply that I no longer feel bad when I can't easily do things that come to others easily. I know my strategies work well for me, and I also know that sometimes they won't work anymore and I'll need to change them up. Experimentation, iteration, and self compassion are core tenets in my own life that I bring into my coaching practice and my online courses. And you know what? There's still stuff that I struggle with on the regular that's related to ADHD. I have figured out a lot, but not everything. And that's okay. I'm still working on it. I still have memory issues, working memory issues, and I don't actually think that's ever going to change. I just work around it. As a kid, I distinctly remember being the one who could never remember what happened in the last chapter of the read aloud book until someone else said it and my memory came flooding back. And as an adult, if you ask me what happened in the last episode of my favorite TV show, I won't be able to tell you until I start watching the next episode, and then it'll all come flooding back. I still have some auditory processing issues. I have to work hard to concentrate on what people are saying, and sometimes it enters my head as gibberish, and I have to repeat it back to myself until I understand it. Loud rooms with multiple conversations happening, restaurants, concerts, these are hard for me. I still struggle not to interrupt and to wait my turn to talk, and this is kind of an embarrassing one. It's never because I'm not interested in what the other person is saying. It's that I'm so eager to converse that sometimes my mouth just opens too fast. About 20 years ago, I got the feedback that I should count for 3 seconds after someone else has spoken before I start speaking. And while I still try to take this advice every single day, it's still hard. And I probably offend some people sometimes. Sorry. You know what? I still burn things on the stove if I don't set an alarm on my phone. If I don't set that alarm on my phone, I will forget. And yet, I never think I will. And yes, I still lose my phone sometimes, probably once a day. But it's all right because I just use that find my phone feature now. Thank you, technology. Since the day I started this business, my message has always been every brain is different, and we have to experiment and iterate to find what works for you. I didn't know for sure that my brain wasn't a neurotypical one until a few years ago. But perhaps that's why I've always felt so strongly about this message. Perhaps I knew innately without knowing explicitly. We all have different strengths. Yet we all want to figure out how to use our time in a way that makes us feel good. The process is not cookie cutter, but there are skills that you can learn and you can adapt. And if I can do it, you can do it. And if you need a little help along the way, well, you know where to find me. Before you go, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that enrollment for my group coaching program, Time Well Spent, is going to be opening up really soon. Now, I only open up enrollment twice a year, and the next cohort starts next month. So if you're even slightly interested in learning more, you can join the waitlist right now. The link's in the show notes. And then you'll be the first to know when enrollment opens, and you'll get all the info you need to decide if Time Well Spent is the right next step for you. And that's a wrap on today's episode of the Do More, Stress Less podcast. If you found today's episode helpful, please share it with somebody who could use a little less stress in their life. And make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're excited to take action or you need a little extra support, check out the free resources available on my website or schedule a free consultation call with me. You can do both of these at alexishasselberger.com. See you next time.